I beat Elden Ring by one-shotting every boss without leveling. And in this video, I'm going to show you how. First, let's establish the rules for this run. Start as the Wretch class. The Wretch is the only class that starts at rune level 1. No leveling up is allowed. Empty every health bar with a single melee hit, even if a boss has multiple phases. Bosses with multiple health bars get a single hit per bar. Attacks that hit multiple times, like Aoke's Dancing Blade, are not true one-shots. Play on the current patch, which is 1.16 at the time of recording. No downpatching for zips, moveset swaps, or tumble buffing is allowed. The run isn't possible without buffs found in the DLC, so visiting the Land of Shadow is required. Along the way, we'll be performing some skips and glitches to reach the necessary items. I'll leave some helpful links in the video description. Create a character, and choose the Lands Between rune as the keepsake. The first goal is to get the Rusted Anchor and upgrade it to plus 12. Head to Gatefront for Torrent, then pick up the Whetstone Knife. Get the 9 Smithing Stones 1 in Limgrave Tunnel, and the 3 Smithing Stones 1 on this corpse south of Stormhill Shack. To the north is the Strength Knot Crystal tier, which increases strength by 10. Head to Mistwood for the Nomadic Warriors Cookbook 4, Spiked Crack tier, and Axe Talisman. Spiked Crack tier and Axe Talisman buff charged attacks by 15% and 10% respectively, providing a combined 26.5% damage boost. To the south, get the Dectus Medallion half from Fort Height, then head back west towards Aguil Lake. On the way, pick up these golden runes from the Height Cemetery. Head towards Weeping Peninsula and pick up the Morning Star, Smithing Stone 2, and Flame of Frenzy. Use your runes to buy the Zweihander from the Isolated Merchant. Now to the Third Church of Marika for the Physic Flask. Then take the teleporter to Caelid. Take the Spirit Spring to Fort Faroth, and get the other Dectus half and Radigan Soreseal. Then take the Spirit Spring to the top of the rock formation near Greyall to pick up 2 Smithing Stone 7 and a Smithing Stone 8. Ride west through Dragonbarrow, heading towards Fort Gale. Pick up Flame Grant Me Strength and Star Scourge Heirloom. Flame Grant Me Strength buffs physical damage and fire damage by 20% for 30 seconds. Ride south towards Redmane Castle. Getting the Red Hot Wet Blade is required now before making more map progress, otherwise the Radon Festival blocks off its location. The Red Hot Wet Blade can imbue weapons with the fire affinity, which adds a lot of extra damage, especially when combined with the Oil Pot debuff, which causes enemies to take 50% more fire damage. That's all on Caelid for now. Use the cliffside path around Stormville Castle and pick up the Two Fingers Heirloom from the Purified Ruins. Now collect the groups of 3 Smithing Stones 2 found around Liurnia. There are groups in the gazebo west of Boilprawn Shack, the gazebo west of Rose Church, the gazebo southeast of Temple Quarter, and here, in the waters of Academy Gate Town, guarded by a giant crab. There are another 5 throughout the Raya Lucaria Crystal Tunnel. Take the Spirit Spring up to Bellum Highway, and then take the Dectus Lift to Altus Plateau. Get the Ruler's Mask from this carriage near the abandoned coffin Site of Grace, then head towards Mount Gelmir. Get the Golden Vow incantation from Corpse Stench Shack. Climb up Mount Gelmir and join Volcano Manor. Use the drawing room key, pick up the letter, and talk to Bernal. Use the key again to open up the room leading to the dungeon area. Run through the area until you loop back to Prison Town Church and perform the Godskin Noble skip. Then pick up the Royal Knight's Resolve Ash of War, which buffs the damage of the next attack by 80%. Back in Altus, pick up the Giant Crusher from the carriage in the encampment by the Outer Wall Phantom Tree Site of Grace, and get the Smithing Stone Miner's Bell 2 from Sealed Tunnel. Head back to Mistwood and take the Shifra River Well elevator. Buy the Nomadic Warriors Cookbook 17 from the merchant. Get Marika's Scar Seal from behind the waterfall in the upper section. North of Warmaster's Shack, get the Golden Vow Ash of War, which buffs damage by 11.5% for 45 seconds. Buy the Finger Seal from the Twin Maiden Husks at the Table of Lost Grace. Head to Morn Tunnel in Weeping Peninsula. The first target is Scaly Misbegotten for the Rusted Anchor. Mix Strength Knot Crystal Tear and Spiked Cracked Tear in the Physic Flask, and craft an oil pot. The oil debuff is applied via splash area, even if the pot doesn't hit the enemy directly. Be sure not to hit bosses with the pot, otherwise it counts as a hit and deals 1 damage. To take full advantage of this buff, put Royal Knight's Resolve on the Zweihander with Fire Affinity. Get the Golden Fowlfoot on the beach near the first step, and kill Grail. Use the runes to buy 12 Smithing Stones 1 and 6 Smithing Stones 2. From the merchants found around Limgrave and Weeping Peninsula. Buy the crafting kit, cracked pots, and arrows from Kale. Buy Armorer's Cookbook 2 and neutralizing boluses from the merchant near Coastal Cave. Buy the Heal incantation from Brother Corin. Buy 24 Smithing Stones 3 and 4, Dagger, Rapier, and Longbow from the Twin Maiden Husks. Then upgrade the Rusted Anchor to +12. Get the Haima Glintstone Crown by killing the Battle Mage near Windmill Village. Haima Glintstone Crown increases strength by 2. Kill Old Knight Istvan to access Bernal's shop, and buy Assassin's Gambit. Open the trap chest at the Tower of Return near the isolated merchant in Weeping Peninsula, and perform a wrong warp to the royal capital. Once there, get the Sanctified Whetblade from Round Table Hold. Head to the subterranean shunning ground. Get the 6 Smithing Stone 7 and 1 Smithing Stone 8 from the Wraithcaller room, Crayfish room, and Pipe Maze. Put Assassin's Gambit on the dagger and use it to sneak past the Lindell Knights after performing Morgott Skip. Ride to the rolled lift and perform a wrong warp into Mountaintops of the Giants. Get the Smithing Stone Miner's Bell 3 from the cellar in Zamor Ruins. Kill the invisible scarab on the frozen lake for the Seppuku Ash of War. Bait the sleeping golem into breaking this statue on the east end of the frozen river for 3 Smithing Stone 7. Get another 3 from the cliff next to the First Church of America. Head to Guardian's Garrison for another Smithing Stone 7. Get the Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone from the Giant Skull in Flame Peak, and then get Okina Mask from the nearby invasion. Perform the skip into Consecrated Snowfields from the west end of the frozen river. Head to the nearest site of grace, then take the teleporter to Mogwin Palace. Get the Smithing Stone 8 from the corpse in front of the tree in the Blood Lake, the Smithing Stone 7 from the dry area approaching the map fragment, and another among these gravestones on the way to the palace midpoint site of grace. To the northwest of the imprisoned merchant, there are 3 Smithing Stones 8. Head back to the palace approach ledge, and farm the bird for enough runes to buy 24 Smithing Stones 5 and 6, and upgrade Rusted Anchor to plus 18. Back in Consecrated, bait the giant crab to break the statue near Cave of the Forlorn for 3 Smithing Stones 8. There's another Smithing Stone 8 on the corpse near the area map fragment. Bait the Sleeping Rune Bear into breaking this statue for 3 Smithing Stone 7 and a Smithing Stone 8. A bit south, there is a corpse next to a giant tree holding a Smithing Stone 8. Enter the Yellow Annex Tunnel and collect the 8 Smithing Stones 8 and an Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. The Rusted Anchor with Fire Affinity is very effective against the miners in this area. Head to 4 Belfries in Liurnia and use the Imbued Stone Sword key to activate the Crumbling Lands teleporter. Take the teleporter, then perform a wrong warp to Crumbling Fair Missoula. Get the Smithing Stone 8 from this entrance path. This one, right before the dragon spawns, and this one, near the Crumbling Beastgrave Depths site of grace. Head a little further into the next room and collect the Smithing Stone 7 from on top of this sarcophagus. Do some parkour to get to the elevator and take it down to the Wormface area. Use Assassin's Gambit to sneak over to the ladder behind the big arch. At the end is a Smithing Stone 8. You should now have 12 Smithing Stones 1 through 6, 24 Smithing Stones 7 and 8, and 2 Ancient Dragon Smithing Stones. Upgrade the Rusted Anchor and Giant Crusher to plus 25. It's time to farm some items, so let's improve item discovery. The first improvement comes in the form of the Silver Tier Mask, dropped by Mimic Tier. To get to this boss fight before defeating Star Scourge Radahn, Rest at the Schiefer Riverbank site of grace. Then, perform a wrong warp to end up right in front of the fog gate. Now, get the Silver Scarab Talisman from the secret path to the Haligtree dungeon. Equip the Silver Tear Mask and Silver Scarab, and farm the Albinorix near the Guest Hall site of grace for the Black Dumpling, which buffs damage by 10% for 60 seconds when madness occurs. Next, head to the Avenue Balcony site of grace and farm for Commoner's Guard, which will raise faith by 1. This is needed to cast Flame of Frenzy and proc Madness, triggering the Black Dumpling buff. The next target is Leonin Misbegotten behind Castle Morn for the Grafted Blade Greatsword. The unique Ash of War on the Grafted Blade is Oath of Vengeance, which increases all stats by 5. This will be necessary for raising stats to meet the minimum requirements for some equipment and incantations. Next up is Margit for the first talisman pouch. The build can't do enough damage to kill Godric in one shot just yet. Head to Seathwater Cave for the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation, which buffs damage by 20% for 20 seconds after poisoning occurs. Pick up the Fire Scorpion charm from Fort Lythe afterwards. Head to Landale Catacombs to fight the area boss Esker. Esker drops the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, which buffs damage by 20% for 20 seconds after blood loss occurs. Craft a Fetid Pot to trigger the Kindred of Rot buff. After one-shotting Esker, get the Spear Talisman from the chest in Lakeside Crystal Cave. In Stormville Castle, get the Iron Whetblade and Missouri Cord. One-shotting Godric can be tricky. Use Spear Talisman to buff a counterattack for an additional 43% damage. Counterattacks only buff physical damage, so using the heavy affinity on Rusted Anchor is the best option. Finally, tilt the camera back a bit to get a headshot for an additional damage boost. After the fight, buy the buckler from Gostok. Restore the power of Godric's rune at the Divine Tower of Limgrave. Godric's Great Rune increases all stats by another 5 points. The next target is Renala for the second talisman pouch. Assassin's Gambit on Misericord is the easiest way to get through the academy at level 1. Talk to Finger Reader Enya at the Table of Lost Grace for the talisman pouch. Golden Shade Godfrey has the third and final talisman pouch, but a few things are needed beforehand. First, get Flame Cleanse Me from the Fire Monk camp south of the Church of Vows. Then head to Carrion Manor. The goal is to progress the Rani quest to access the Mushroom Crown. Royal Knight Loretta stands in between, but she's an easy one-shot. It's a long walk through Ainsel River and Lake of Rot, so make sure to allocate Crimson Flasks. The Mushroom Crown buffs damage by 10% for 20 seconds after poisoning occurs. The buff stacks with Kindred of Rot's Exaltation for a combined 32% damage boost. Next, get the Sacred Scorpion Charm by defeating the Anastasia invasion in front of the Smoldering Church. This buffs holy damage by 12%. Head to the Scenic Isle Site of Grace, and change the Rusted Anchor affinity to Sacred. Pass time to Nightfall, so the Deathbird will spawn at the nearby ruin. The Deathbird here drops the Red Feathered Branch Sword Talisman, which buffs damage by 20% when HP is below 20%. This is similar to the Red Tearstone Ring from the Soul series, so old heads often refer to it as RTSR. Pick up the perfume bottle and Perfumer's Cookbook 2 from Shaded Castle. This contains the recipe for Blood Boil Aromatic, which buffs physical damage by 30% for 60 seconds. Finally, get the White Mask by defeating the nameless White Mask invasion in the Mogwin Blood Lake. White Mask buffs damage by 10% for 20 seconds when blood loss occurs, and stacks with Lord of Blood's Exaltation for a combined 32% damage boost. With 4 active talisman slots, the build is shaping up nicely for endgame bosses, but there is a lot more work to be done. The next goal is to get Commander Standard, dropped by Commander O'Neill, but one-shotting O'Neill requires some help. Head to the Ancestral Wood Site of Grace and light the obelisks to access the Regal Ancestor Spirit. Talk to Enya to exchange Remembrance of the Regal Ancestor for Winged Greathorn. The Winged Greathorn's unique Ash of War, Soul Stifler, debuffs enemies, causing them to take 30% more damage. This is a powerful debuff, but has very limited use due to its cast time. Luckily, it's super effective against bosses that can be put to sleep or snuck up on, like O'Neill. The unique Ash of War on Commander Standard is Rallying Standard, which buffs damage by 20% for 30 seconds. This is an aura buff that can replace Golden Vow. It's a much more potent buff, but it's a bit more difficult to incorporate into the ritual due to its shorter duration. Before the DLC was released, there was no way to get this run past Godskin Duo, so this is where the run would have died. But luckily, the DLC is here, and with it came a ton of new buffs. 2 bosses need to be defeated in order to access the DLC, and one of them happens to be the unfinished business back in Caelid. so head over to Redmane Castle once again. The other boss guarding the DLC is Mohg, Lord of Blood. With over 18,000 hit points, there's just no way to one-shot this guy without DLC buffs. However, by performing an unload glitch near his boss arena, he has an off-screen heart attack, somehow, which is very convenient for us. Welcome to the Land of Shadow at level 1. There is a whole laundry list of stuff to do in the DLC. Just make sure to be collecting Shadow Tree fragments along the way. In my run, I collected 26 fragments, none of which required any fighting to get. This got me to Blessing level 12, which buffed my damage dealt to DLC enemies by an absolutely insane 85%. Start off by getting the hefty cracked pot in the Scorched Ruins. In Bellarat Tower Settlement, farm the Horned Warrior for the Horned Warrior Helm, which raises strength by 5. The drop rate is 3%, which is not that bad, but this is a tough enemy to fight with a low blessing level. The Horned Warrior Helm isn't needed until the very last boss in the game, so this can be put off as long as you need. I couldn't have been luckier in my run. The very first Horned Warrior I killed dropped both the helm and sword. Defeat the Queline invasion in the Bellarat main plaza for the Crusade insignia, which buffs damage by 15% for 20 seconds after an enemy is killed. Get the Bellarat sewer key and use it to access the Poisoned Hand weapon. When equipped, it provides a 7.5% damage buff for 20 seconds after poison occurs. This buff stacks with Mushroom Crown and Kindred of Rot's Exaltation for a combined 41.9% damage boost. West of the Elec Great Bridge, pick up the Greater Potentate's Cookbook 2. This contains the recipe to craft heavy furnace pots. Head to Bonnie Village for another 2 hefty cracked pots and a raw meat dumpling. Get the two-handed sword talisman from Templetown Ruins. Farm for 3 pieces of Sacred Bloody Flesh from Rivermouth Cave. Sacred Bloody Flesh applies an exaltation effect for 30 seconds. If blood loss occurs within the 30 seconds the effect is active, it buffs damage by 18% for 30 seconds. This buff stacks with White Mask and Lord of Blood's Exaltation for a combined 55.76% damage boost. Get the Lightning Perfume bottle from this stream, northwest of the Cerulean Coast Site of Grace. Head down the Stone Coffin Fissure. This is a rough slog at level 1, but it's possible with Assassin's Gambit and some perseverance. At the Fissure Depths Site of Grace, put Royal Knight's Resolve on Giant Crusher with Sacred Affinity. After defeating Putrescent Knight, enter the Cave of Saint Trina, and pick up Saint Trina Disciples Cookbook 3, which contains the recipe to craft Lulling Branch. Interact with Saint Trina, then tell Thalia of her whereabouts. Head back to the cave and exhaust Thalia's dialogue. Imbibe Saint Trina's nectar until she speaks to you, and pass it along to Thalia. Repeat this until the Thalia invasion. He will drop Saint Trina's Smile, which buffs damage by 20% for 30 seconds after sleep occurs. Now, head to the Dragon's Pit and defeat Ancient Dragon Man using the Rusted Anchor. Proceed to the foot of the Jagged Peak and get in this position to perform the Legacy glitch. Use a Lulling Branch and alternate lightning perfume bottle attacks to set up the correct timing to call Torrent on the same frame that Sleep procs. Use Heal to reactivate gravity and choose to spawn at the Stake of Marika. Welcome to the Abyssal Woods. Once in the Abyssal Woods, defeat the Madding Hand enemy for the eponymous weapon. Madding Hand buffs damage by 7.5% for 30 seconds after madness occurs. Next, travel west from the abandoned church and parry the Aging Untouchable to make it vulnerable to attacks. Defeating it grants the Aged One's Exaltation, which buffs damage by 20% for 30 seconds after madness occurs. This stacks with Black Dumpling and Madding Hand for a combined 41.9% damage boost. Finally, head to the Ruins of Unti and craft 3 hefty furnace pots. Use them to defeat the Unlit Furnace Golem for the Blood-Sucking Cracked Tear, which buffs damage by 20% for 3 minutes. It also drains a significant amount of HP every second, but there are ways of dealing with that. And that's all for the DLC. To truly take advantage of these new buffs, the Frenzy Flamestone must be incorporated into the ritual. Unfortunately, there is only one of these items in the entire game. Fortunately, there is a recipe to craft them, and unfortunately, the cookbook containing that recipe is locked behind 2 bosses, Morgott and Mohg the Omen. Morgott is first. Defeat the Vike invasion at the Church of Inhibition for Vike's War Spear. The Frenzy Flame Thrust Ash of War builds madness faster than the Frenzy Flame incantation, so it comes in handy when incorporating madness into rituals with shorter buff durations. After one-shotting Morgott, pick up the one and only Frenzy Flame Stone off this corpse near the ruined Labyrinth Site of Grace. Get the Preceptor set off Celavis's corpse behind Caria Manor. Use Lulling Branch and Frenzy Flame Stone to build Sleep and Madness so they proc at the same time, canceling the Rallying Standard animation. The Preceptor gloves and trousers provide enough focus to prevent madness from proccing twice during the rest of the buff ritual. After one-shotting Moog, head into Frenzied Flame Prescription for the Frenzied's Cookbook 2. If Morgott was still alive, there'd be a seal here blocking our entry. Buy Blessing's Boon from Muriel in the Church of Vows. Get Perfumer's Cookbook 1 from the Perfumer's Ruins, northwest of the abandoned coffin Site of Grace. Get Nomadic Warrior's Cookbook 19 from the Woodfolk Ruins in the Wormface Valley. Craft Uplifting Aromatic and Warming Stones. Buy the Prisoner's Clothes from the Merchant in Ainsel River. This is a bit of a fashion soul's choice, but it also increases focus enough to slow down the rate of status buildup, so that there's enough time to apply the other buffs during the ritual. Progress through Crumbling Farum Azula. Touch the Dragon Temple Transept Grace before triggering the Godskin Duo fight by hugging the wall to the right when entering the arena. This one-shot is only possible with a counterattack damage buff, and the window is very small on Godskin Apostle. Just keep at it. To make the Malachus fight easier, incorporate the Uplifting Aromatic. This tanks his first hit, so that a charged heavy will land while the damage buffs are still active. There's not much to say about the Gideon fight. The first time entering the Godfrey arena, he does a scripted axe grind attack. To get the counterattack damage buff, walk forward until he slams his axe on the ground, then charged heavy. On to the final boss. Have the Crusade Talisman equipped when one-shotting Radagon, then refresh the Poison Hand buff with Raw Meat Dumpling before proccing Lord of Blood's Exaltation with Seppuku. It's pretty tight on timing, but it becomes easy with a little practice. And that's it. It's crazy how overpowered a build can become in this game without leveling up a single stat or using any of the infamously broken spells like Comet Azure or Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. But that's one of the reasons this game is so good. It lets you be overpowered. If you try this run out, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.